Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of The Lindsey Elmore Show. Have you ever felt that you just were carrying around a burden that you no longer needed to carry? I think we all have, because we all are plagued at some point in our lives by negative emotions. We are all put into a space where we think that we are not good enough, unworthy, fearful, frustrated, where we have anger or lack empathy. We all go through the entire range of human emotions. That's what makes us human. But sometimes when we carry around all of this toxicity, it leads us to a point where we no longer feel like ourselves, where we feel that we are out of our bodies and we're unable to settle into a space of peace, a space of quiet, and a space of what I know to be the godliness, the goodness in me. In today's episode, I interview David Sandstrom. He is a naturopathic doctor and biblical health coach about how not dealing with our negative emotions can lead us to live extremely toxic lives. Let's get to the show. Welcome to The Lindsey Elmore Show, a podcast for people who deserve to be healthy, with honest, open, and enlightening conversations with doctors, thought leaders, creatives, and spiritual gurus. You'll walk away with simple and tangible tips and tricks that allow you to live your healthiest life so you can pursue your dreams, overcome obstacles, and leave your mark. Today on the show, we have David Sandstrom. David is a naturopathic doctor and a biblical health coach. He is the author of The Christian's Guide to Holistic Health, and he is also the host of the Holistic Health Matters podcast, where you can hear me as a guest. He also has an MBA and is an airline captain. And today, he and I talk about how toxic emotions become poisonous to us and can derail all of our positive efforts to live our healthiest life. David is an expert in the mind-body connection, and we start our conversation with the power of forgiveness. Dr. David Sandstrom, welcome to the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you asking me on.
I am so excited to chat with you today because you and I both understand that total health cannot fully be present without some sort of journey through our emotions. And you teach people how to process health through their spirit, through their mind, through their body. And I wanted to start our conversation today with the concept of forgiveness, because bad things happen in all of our lives. We make mistakes. Other people hurt us. Series of circumstances happen around us that lead us to have those regrets and the guilt and carry it and allow it just to ruminate. And you maintain that forgiveness is an absolutely critical part of health and well-being. Start us out today and just tell us why.
Sure. If we're going to be in relationships, forgiveness is going to be a part of our everyday thing. I love the way John Eldredge puts it in his book called Waking the Dead. He says, living in community is like a bunch of porcupines on a cold night. We need to stick together to help keep warm, but as soon as we get close, we poke each other with our spines. So we're going to hurt one another. We're imperfect beings, and we need to exercise the skill, the practice of forgiveness if we really want to maximize our health potential. It's my contention that we maximize our health potential when we align our lives more fully with God's design for spirit, mind, and body. And forgiveness is firmly planted in the spiritual component as well as the mental emotional component. So because without practicing this and doing it well, we might hold on to some toxic feelings like resentment, bitterness, anger, rage, hatred, and we don't call those toxic emotions for nothing. They will impact our health. There's a relationship there between our mental, emotional, spiritual, and the physical. So what we want to do is, it's important when we're talking about forgiveness, it's important to understand the concept of an emotional cup. And the concept is this: every one of us has a limited capacity to handle our emotions. And when our cup is filled up with troubling emotions like resentment, fear, anxiety, there's not a lot of room in there for positive stuff. And when we get pushed, our cup spills over. It's like you're at a party, you're holding the red party cup with something, some punch in it, and someone knocks into you, something's going to spill out the top. Well, in a relational context, that stuff that spills out the top is the stuff that messes with our relationships. Maybe it's biting sarcasm. Maybe it's some type of passive aggressive behavior, or maybe it's stonewalling. These are the kinds of things that we find ourselves in the counselor's office over. But the real problem is those are the symptoms. The real problem is we have a full emotional cup. So what we want to do is empty our cup, and the symptoms will go away on their own. Jesus was asked, when he was talking about adultery, he said, "You've heard it said that you should not commit adultery. But I tell you, if a man looks at a woman lustfully, he's already committed adultery with her in his heart." So he internalized it, and he said, take care of the lust, and the adultery will go away on its own. So in the same way, when we take care of our emotional cup, we start to drain that thing with all those negative emotions that we hold on to from unforgiveness. We will have more capacity to enjoy positive emotions, which are, of course, health promoting. So getting into forgiveness. So forgiveness is a supernatural act. We don't naturally want to give up our right to retaliate. And we don't find it in nature. The forest fire doesn't, the forest doesn't forgive the lightning for starting the fire. The gazelle doesn't forgive the lion for devouring its young. It's not natural in nature. It's a supernatural act. But withholding forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And that's what we do when we don't get this right. So I like this metaphor. Forgiveness is kind of like crossing monkey bars. Remember, we all should play on monkey bars when we were in grade school. You'd grab a hold of one, and then you'd reach out and grab one as far ahead as you could. But in order to move forward, you have to let go of that bar behind so that you can reach forward to the one in front of you. The same is true with forgiveness. If we're holding on to what's happened to us in the past, we're not going to be able to move forward in a productive way. Another great quote is one from Mark Twain. "Forgiveness is the fragrance the rose gives off to the heel that crushed it." I really like that one. So when we practice regular confession and forgiveness, we empty our emotional cup and we watch the symptoms go away. So unforgiveness is a big part of pursuing health by nurturing our spirit. God takes forgiveness very seriously. It's in the Lord's Prayer. In Matthew chapter 6, we see, "And forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors." So why is God so serious about forgiveness? Because it hurts the ones he loves. He wants what's best for us. And he wants health for us. He wants positive outcomes. He wants to bless us. And he knows that holding on to this bitterness that comes along with unforgiveness will destroy our health. So he wants us to get this right. And we're not commanded to forgive for the other person's sake. It's primarily for our benefit, because it robs us of part of the abundant life that Jesus promised us in John 10:10. So when we fail to forgive, we somehow think that we're punishing that person. But what we do is we end up empowering the perpetrator, even if they're deceased, to impact us in a negative fashion. So we only get to live life in the present. We can't live in the past. So when we live in the past and hold grudges, we allow resentment and bitterness to fester like open sores. So it really is a spiritual battle. And God has forgiven us, each of us. As my Christian faith teaches me that God has given us forgiveness. Well, it's easy to ask for forgiveness and receive it, but when it comes to offering forgiveness, that's a horse of a different color. We have sometimes had a little more difficulty with that, and I believe that's because many people have a lot of misconceptions as to what forgiveness is and isn't. I'd like to talk about some of the things that it's not. I think will help clear it up for some people. If you
Okay. Well, let's go into it.
All right. So forgiveness is not excusing the person. We don't minimize or explain away what they did, make excuses for it, and we say what we did, it didn't matter. What we do say is what they did was wrong. We don't excuse the person. So forgiveness is also not letting go of accountability. Someone might have broken the law. There might be legal consequences or repercussions for what they've done to us. So it's not letting go of the accountability. And it's not denying reality either. We may have to change the way we relate to that person if they fail to stop the abuse or the hurtful behavior. But we acknowledge reality. Forgiveness is not letting offenses reoccur again and again or becoming a doormat. All right. We don't tolerate abuse. That's not loving ourselves well. Forgiveness is not being a martyr. We shouldn't become doormats because we've forgiven someone. The behavior needs to stop. And it's also not based on other people's actions or attitudes. And this is a tough one. No one earns our forgiveness. We offer it unilaterally, regardless of what they do or fail to do. So a lot of people might feel like, well, I'll forgive them when they ask me to forgive. That's not a healthy approach to look at it. Regardless of what they do, they might even be deceased. It might be impossible to ask that person, talk to that person, but we can let it go and still forgive anyway. Forgiveness is not stuffing the hurt, because feelings buried alive never die, right? So we don't just stuff it. We don't just sweep it under the rug or pretend it never happened. No, we bring it up and we talk about it. Forgiveness is not believing time heals all wounds. That is not true. That's a fallacy. Wounds inflicted on us in childhood can linger for a lifetime. I can tell you, my wife and I have been doing marriage groups for the last 7 years. It would take about 9 months to go through this book called Intimate Encounters with about a dozen couples. And we see wounds that people received in childhood. Maybe they were 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, and they're still wrestling with it, and they're 50 now or 60. And they're still wrestling with these conclusions they made about the world and how to interact with others because of what happened to them when they were 12. It's so time does not heal all wounds. Forgiveness is not conditional. Conditional forgiveness is an oxymoron. We forgive even if they never repent or ask for it. Forgiveness is not a feeling. If we wait until we feel like forgiving, it'll likely never happen. We do it anyway because we know it's what's best for us. Forgiveness is not reconciling. You might be able to reconcile with that person, but you might not. That's not a precondition to forgiveness. We can provide forgiveness without expecting anything in return. Forgiveness is not forgetting. We don't have to forget what's been done to us, but we likely will remember. Forgiveness allows us to remember with more grace. When we forgive from the heart, we can recall the event without the pain. That's when we know we've forgiven. Another thing forgiveness is not, and it's not dependent upon the extent of our pain. We may feel that because our pain is so deep, it's okay to withhold forgiveness. That's another falsehood. So that's what forgiveness isn't. And I think, we can hold on to a lot of those things and it'll prevent us from moving forward. So forgiveness, what is it then? Well, it's a command. We talked about, it being in the Lord's Prayer and many other places in the Bible we're commanded to forgive. It's not a recommendation, it's a command. So it is yielding to God the right to take care of justice. So we don't want to take this matter into our own hands. We just turn it, we release them, and we turn it over to God. Forgiveness is giving up on anger and allowing God to heal, repay, restore, convict, and love on us and love them as well by convicting them of their behavior. That's not our job. That's God's job. So forgiveness is also absorbing the cost of the debt ourselves, just as God did for us by dying on the cross. We absorb the cost of that debt. We don't make them pay for it. So, because forgiveness is really about not making them pay for what they've done. So we absorb the cost of that debt on ourselves. Forgiveness is refusing to extract restitution. The perpetrator, you may feel like they owe me, but no, we let that go. That's part of forgiveness. We simply let it go and we turn them over to God. Forgiveness is, and I'm saying God a lot, but some listeners might want to refer to God as, the higher power or the universe, or, most people believe that there is something outside of ourselves that's kind of running things. Doesn't have to be God for you, but there has to be an entity or a power that you can turn this stuff over to. Otherwise, I don't think your forgiveness is going to be as complete as it can be.